All right, in this video, we're going to take a look at the different ifs functions. And when I say ifs, I'm going to just type in, if, s, the plurals. So we're going to be looking at COUNTIFS, AVERAGEIFS, and SUMIFS and how those work. Now in the past, we've used SUMIF singular, COUNTIF singular, and AVERAGEIF singular. But what this function does, these functions do, is they give us the opportunity to have multiple criteria. And so in this first example, we've got a list of all the lemonade sales that our different locations of our lemonade stand have done and the month that those sales were made in. And what we want to do here in this cell is we want to have a total of June sales that happened at the West location. So let's take a look at how to do that using SUMIFS, because with SUMIF we would only be able to choose either location or month. But in this case, we're going to do in this cell, we want to do a COUNTIFS because we're talking about quantity. So COUNTIFS says, what do you want criteria range 1 to be? Now we have two criteria. We have location, which would be West, and we have the date, which would be June. And so I'm going to choose my criteria range 1 will be right here, the list of all the different locations. And it says, what do you want your criteria to be? And I'm going to click on West right here. My next criteria range 2 is going to be the months that all of these sales occurred. And I'm going to hit comma, and then it asks me, what do you want your criteria 2 to be? And in this case, I want it to be June. Okay, I'm going to hit enter, and it says I had 2 sales in June at the West location. So just to do a double check, I'm going to go over here and say, well, here's all my June sales. And sure enough, at West, I did 2 sales. So that formula appears to be correct. Now, what we really want to be able to do is to autofill this formula across and then autofill it down. But as you can see, that's not working real well. And that's because we didn't set up our references properly. So let's take a look at this cell right here. And when I look at it, you can see I'm pulling the correct month, but I'm not pulling the correct location, because by autofilling across to the right, it moved this reference from West to this cell right here. Likewise, if we look at this cell right here, I am looking at the correct location, but I am not pulling the proper month, because when I autofilled down, it moved from the third row, to the fourth row. So I'm going to hit undo twice. Let's see how we can fix this formula so that we don't have to worry about those autofills. So the first thing is, as I autofill across, I don't want my references to either the location or the months to change. And so I'm going to come up here and change these to a fixed reference, which is a concept I believe you're familiar with by now. And I'm going to use a shortcut by hitting the F4 key. And that puts in all the dollar signs where they need to be. And as long as I'm doing that reference, I'm going to do the criteria range for the months as well. Go ahead and hit F4 there. Now, F4 is this cell right here. If you think about it, when I autofill across, I do not want that cell to move. But when I autofill down, I do want that cell to move. So West will then become East. So I don't want the column to change as I autofill across, but I do want the row to change as I autofill down. Therefore, I'm going to anchor the column only, $F, but I'm going to leave the row relative. And this is what's known as a mixed reference. Part of it is fixed and part of it is relative. Okay, let's take a look at the green right here for June. That's G3. As I autofill across, I do want it to change columns, but as I autofill down, I do not want it to change rows. Therefore, I'm going to fix the row, make it absolute, or fixed, but the column is going to remain relative. So let's take a look and see if this worked. And autofill across, and then autofill down. And it looks like in July, West, did we have 3 sales? Well, here's July. And there's 1, 2, 3 for the West location and 2 for the East. So it looks like that is correct. Let's take a look at what this concept is when we want to add up the dollar amounts of the sales. So we're on the June and on the West location. And so let's type in our SUMIFS. Okay. Quantity always implies COUNTIFS. Totals always implies SUMIFS. Okay. So my sum range is going to be, what do I want to add up? And in this case, it's pretty obvious. I want to add up the dollar amounts. So I'm going to do that. And I'm going to just set a really good habit here and make that a fixed reference right away. Okay. Next, my criteria range. Let's go with location first. Doesn't matter. I could choose location or time. Doesn't really matter. But let's go ahead and choose our range for our locations. And I'm going to go ahead and change that to a fixed reference. Next, we will do our criteria for that. And that would be West right here. Now I'm going to set this one up right away. So as I autofill across, I do not want the column to change, but as I autofill down, I do want the row to change. So I'm going to make the column portion of that reference fixed, but this will remain a mixed reference because the rows are relative. Next, we're going to go to criteria range 2, which will be the months. I'm going to highlight that and make that a fixed reference. Oops, didn't mean to do that. Make that a fixed reference. Go back here and fix this $sign there. All right, so the criteria that I have for this range of months would be June. And I do want the columns to change as I autofill across, but I do not want the rows to change as I autofill down. So I'm going to put a $sign in front of that row number, and that relative reference should work well for me there. Go ahead and hit enter. And it would appear I have $2 worth of sales in June at the West location. So let's go ahead and look, and sure enough, West has 50 cents and $1.50. I'm going to autofill that across and then down. And then just for good measure, I'm going to go up here and hit the currency and auto size that column. And there we go. There's our numbers there. All right. Lastly, we're going to use the average ifs. Works exactly the same as the COUNTIFS, where we have a range and criteria. All right. So our average range is going to be our dollar amounts. Our criteria range 1, we could choose location or time, doesn't really matter. Again, I'm going to choose location. I'm going to go a little faster this time, make that a fixed reference. The criteria for that is going to be West right here in F16. And I do want that to change as I autofill down, but I do not want it to change as I autofill across. So I'm going to put a $sign in front of the column. And that way that will not change, but the row will as I autofill. My next criteria range is going to be the list of months. And I'm going to hit comma. And then I'm going to click on June because that is the criteria that I want to be applied against those months. Now, June I do want to change to July and August as I autofill across. But as I autofill down, I do not want that row to change. So we're going to go ahead and put in the $sign there. And let's close out this function and see if that worked. So the average for June on the West would be 1, and that's right because in June we had 2 sales for $2, so that would be an average sale of $1 each. Autofill across, autofill down, and we got an error, and so I'm wondering, hey, what's my error? Well, I forgot to make those absolute references, so that's a good way to see how that would look if you got that wrong. So let's go ahead in here and fix this. I always call this is like the cornerstone formula for these types of tables. The one that you set in the top left corner is very important because you need to get it correct. Otherwise, you end up with the situation we're in now. But what I'm going to do is go up here and make this range an absolute reference. And I'm going to make this range an absolute reference. Hit enter. And now let's see if our autofill can straighten this division by 0 error out. And there we go. I can go ahead and change that to currency as well. And those are the answers that we would expect. The next situation we're going to take a look at is over here in loyalty cards. And we've got a couple of functions that we want to look at. But the way this one was working is we have got all these customers that have loyalty cards. And as it says right here, after 10 visits, so after 10 visits, you get a credit of 15% of your purchases. Okay. So for this person, it would be $63, I believe, would be 15% of their purchases. And they have met that $10 limit, but we also need to make sure that their card is still valid. All right. So let's go ahead and we'll worry about this level in a little bit, but let's go ahead and over here, what I want to do is get the total of all eligible orders. So eligible orders are people who are valid and have a visit count of 10 or more. Okay, and then we're going to add those up. So let's take a look at how this works. The first thing we're going to do is start out with our SUMIFS function. And our sum range is going to be pretty predictably this row, or this column right here of all our dollar amounts. That's what we hope to total up. Okay, the next thing we're going to say is our criteria range. Let's go and say status, and we're going to say that the criteria for that criteria range is equal to valid. And so I'm going to type in the text value valid. And then the next criteria range is going to be this visit count. And I'm going to hit comma and go to the criteria 2. Now, what's interesting about this is that you would think you could just type in greater than 2, but we actually have to put that in quotation marks. What am I saying? Greater than 2, greater than 10. We want it to be greater than or equal to 10. And so I'm going to go ahead and have that be my criteria for that range, greater than or equal to. And then let's go ahead and close our parentheses and see if we get the answer we would expect. Now, one of the ways, and I'm going to change this to a dollar amount, one of the ways I proof out these formulas is I go and I do it like this, valid and greater than 10 or equal to 10, yes. And so I'm going to select that cell. Valid but not equal to or greater than 10, nope, 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 yes. And so I'm going to control click this cell right here. This one is also valid and should be in my count. And this one is also valid and should be in my count. So I'm going to control click each of those 4 cells. And when I go down here and look, if you can see down here in the right bottom corner, it gives me a sum of the cells I have selected, 1906. And that's what I would expect to see here is 1906. And if I wanted to see how much is my restaurant on the hook for reward credits, I would simply take this number right here that I've calculated, and I told my customers that I would give them a 15% credit for all of the money that they had spent once they get to 10 visits. And so right now my restaurant's on the hook for $285.90 of reward credits. The next thing we're going to do is a new function to Excel 2019, and it's called the switch function. And I'm just going to demonstrate it and you'll see what it does. But over here we've got these card numbers. And the rule that I have is that anyone in the 1000s would be a bronze level customer. The 2000s is silver, the 3000s is gold, and the 4000s is platinum. Okay, and so what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to write a function or formula with a function that will place those levels in these cells. So the first thing, how am I going to get which thousand increment they're in? Well, I'm going to use the left function, and I'm going to say for this text, and hit comma, it says what number of characters would you like from the left of this text? And I'm going to say 1. Okay, and if you autofill that down, now we've got the leftmost piece of text from each of these card numbers. Okay, so how's this going to work for us with the switch function? Well, what we're going to do is we're going to type in switch, and then the switch function expects an expression. Now our expression is we took the left function and pulled the one character from the leftmost portion of this text. Okay. So now we get into these value result pairs. And the way it's going to work is for a value of 1, I would like to put bronze. Okay, default or value 2, and I'm going to say for a value of 2, I would like to put silver. And I don't know if you can see, but how there's these square brackets around value 2 and result 2. So these two things go together. So now we're going to value 3, and I'm going to say for a 3, I would like to put gold. And for a value of 4, I would like to put a value of platinum. All right, and I'm going to go ahead and close that function. And the switch function has put in bronze. And if I autofill that down all the way, you'll see that I have these 2 platinum customers. I have 2 silver, and then the rest is bronze and gold. And that is a case of where you would use the switch function. Now, if you just watch me do the switch function, you might be asking yourself, why wouldn't I just use the ifs function? So let's take a look at that. I'm going to go ahead and insert another column here, and we'll do a level with ifs. And we'll take a look at why we would want to use the switch function rather than ifs. So you might remember that over here we started with this left function to calculate what's that first digit in the membership number or the card number. And so we did that. So now let's say we wanted to use ifs to get bronze, silver, gold, or platinum. Well, we'd have to type this left function many times. Let me demonstrate. If I said ifs and then logical test, does that left equal a 1? And if it does, then let's go ahead and put in bronze. Okay, so now we have to do is left B3 first character equal to 2. If it is, then we're going to have it put silver in that. And so you can see I'm having to type this left function over multiple times. So anytime your conditional test involves the same function, the same way of getting the answer, you'd be better off just writing that function once in a switch function and then allowing it to simply have a list of answers like 1, 2, 3, and then the values associated with those answers, bronze, silver, gold. But let's go ahead and finish this one out just so you can see what I'm talking about. B3, 1 equals 4. And in that case, we want it to be platinum. So I'm able to do the exact same answers in these cells, but take a look at how many times I had to write that same formula over and over again, where with the switch function, I wrote that formula once, and then I said this could equal 1, or this could equal 2, or this could equal 3, or it could equal 4, and then here's the associated values that I want in that cell if those are the answers. So that would be the explanation of why use switch, why use ifs.